Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have an assortment of terrifying encounters to share with you. I'd also like to discuss a couple of things that I have planned for the future of the channel. But before we get into that, a couple of links. As you know, I rely on Patreon and PayPal and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below, as my merch is displayed directly under this video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Alright guys, so a lot of you have heard the two uploads I had done in regards to my daughter, my oldest daughter, and her friends run-in with what I and they believe to be a dogman in the cemetery in our town. I actually live in a city in upstate New York, which it's not much of a city because we are surrounded by a forest, the Adirondack forest. And so when I was talking in regards to the encounter, a couple of people were like, you know, how big is this cemetery? It wasn't what a lot of people imagined. The cemetery is probably the oldest thing in our town. And when I went there with my camera a couple days before Christmas, I think on the 22nd, I brought you guys to the location of it. And I said it was about 10 acres, which it's not, it's more. And there is a pond, there are streams, there's mini forests, there's a lot in there. Completely forgetting that I have a book detailing the layout and history of the cemetery. And I found the book 2 nights ago, the night after Christmas, while I was kind of just cleaning out the studio a little bit, getting ready to kind of do some more things, more cleaning in the studio, rearranging. But I have a lot of plans with this cemetery this summer. So I kind of wanted to share with you before we get into the upload, because it pertains to the channel. This summer I want to go to the cemetery on 2 different occasions for 2 different reasons. One, I want to do a little bit of cryptid stakeout. I'd like to just go to the cemetery, observe the night, possibly just record a couple of encounters while I'm there, for a change of scenery, do an outside kind of recording. And the next reason why I'm going there, or next trip I will be going, will be for kind of a spirit ghost hunt. Now, I don't know, a lot of people, when I said that I was getting into it for the channel, I'm not new at this. I've been doing this since I was 18. I'm 45 now. I've been very active in researching the paranormal. I've had quite a bit of different encounters or experiences. One of the most baffling to me is when I was on the Aquasachie Reservation, which is north of me, visiting family, and we were in a sweat lodge, and there was a older gentleman that was in there with us that wasn't there when we started or when we ended. that was very, very interesting. Not terrifying, but cool. So I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of what the cemetery is, and then move on to the encounters. But like I said, the ghost hunting part, I've been doing this for a long time. I've researched a lot. I've talked to actually one of the founding people before Ghost Hunter or whatever Zach Baggins character is. There was a gentleman named David Pickman, and he has written probably 7 books, and he comes from my neck of the woods. I believe he was a teacher in Salem, New York, and he lived in Chestertown. And I've got a couple of his autographed books. I went to a kind of a seminar where he was discussing his ghost hunting, and he taught us how to use dowsing rods. Very, very cool individual. He passed in 2013, unfortunately. So I'm not new. I'm definitely going to be prepared and definitely going to take precautions on protecting myself. I have 2 young daughters. Well, not young, but young enough that I need to care for. So I am going to be very safe. I don't want people to worry about that. A couple people commented. But anyway, for Christmas, I ended up getting a spirit box, which for those of you who don't know, it is a box that kind of cycles through radio stations at a speed. You can set it from like 50 to 350 and AM FM. It's very, very cool. I've tinkered around with it a little bit the other night to learn how to use it. I got an EMF reader. I have an SLS camera, which is the stick figure camera, and I have an EVP recorder. I'm going to be getting a REM pod next, and then I will have everything I need for the next part of my life, I guess. I'm going to continue to do this cryptid because it's the cryptid part is my main passion. I've always loved Dogman, Bigfoot, unexplained humanoid creatures, aquatic cryptid, because not only do we have Bigfoot and Dogman in the Adirondacks, but we have Lake Champlain, which is the home of Champ, and a lot more other weird cryptid entities. So where I'm going to be doing my first ghost kind of hunt, not even really a ghost hunt, I'm gonna kind of like a ghost meeting, I guess, is going to be at this cemetery. And I just want to kind of quickly fill you in on what this cemetery is about. In 1853, the village at that time of Glens Falls authorized the purchase of a suitable plot for a cemetery. In the beginning, 13 acres were purchased from Andrew Porteous, who is a probably great-great-grandfather of my English teacher in high school, Mr. Porteous Eric. The last addition to the property was made in 1973, making it a total of 32 acres. The first burial took place in 1855, but many graves from the West Street Cemetery were moved to the Bay Street property, which means there are burials dating well before 1855. There are 15,222 known burials in this cemetery, with many people from Glens Falls' history included. So the first kind of ghost meeting that I'm going to do is this person's plot, and I'm going to have to go to 2 different places: the plot and the chimney that remains of her old home. This person has been a legend, a scary horror legend in our town for 100 years now. Everyone knows the Witch of Abigail West. this is who I'm going to be hopefully meeting with. Abigail Platt West, 1764, May 11th, 1811. Abigail was born at about 1764 and died on May 11th, 1811 in Queensbury, New York. She married William Butler West around 1783. Folklore says that on May 11th, 1811, Abigail was struck and killed by lightning while near what is now Butler Pond on West Mountain, and her remains were not found for weeks after. She crawled more than a mile looking for help before eventually dying. While she was not found for many days, she was buried in the West Cemetery on West Mountain as soon as she was found. Since that time, she has been searching all of West Mountain, trying to find her children. She would find herself in the cemetery up on the mountain near the old weeping willow. If you look at her gravestone, you'll see a weeping willow engraved on the top. After 40 years of sitting there and watching, waiting, hoping for answers, the locals decided to dig up and move her body down to the Bay Street Cemetery to Glens Falls. To the horror of the diggers, her body was not there. It was then that people started calling Abigail West a witch, and also when she started haunting the mountain. It is said that she burned down her old home and lights fires in the chimney every night. If you go up West Mountain on John Clendon Road, you will find the brick cemetery or brick chimney. Just wait. She may start a fire up while you are there and then chase you off the mountain. Some say she was buried at the stake for being a witch, or that she perished in the fire on her prom night waiting for her date. But neither is true. She was 45 when she died, too old to be going to prom, and she did not become a witch until she was dead, as the story is told. It is said that if you encounter Abigail, you will feel heat then cold no matter what time of the year. Sometimes she makes it so you trip and fall down the mountain, not to hurt you, but to get your attention so she can ask if you have seen her family or her body. She just wants to be joined with her husband and children. So that is part of what is going to be happening, be expanding. I have plans on also going back up to Brant Lake, Horicon, and spending some more time up in the area where Tom Mezek disappeared. I've got a lot of different little plans set that this year I couldn't do. This winter I'm going to try to focus on getting myself a little healthier. Just mentally, physically, and that way I can really do the things that I want to do before my illness eventually takes me out. And I'm not saying that for any kind of sympathy or empathy. It's something that I've had to deal with for some time now, and I just want to experience the as much that I can in life before it does happen. So that's what the plan for the channel is. I'm going to continue every day to do cryptids, but periodically I'm going to put like a ghost meeting in as a bonus upload. There will always be a cryptid upload, but there will a Dogman cryptid upload, but there will also be a bonus ghost meeting urban X kind of video, maybe 2 a week, just to kind of really live my life how I want to. So that is the update for the channel. Let's get into some encounters. Today's first encounter. I've recently tried to discuss this with my boyfriend, but I don't feel any relief about what happened to me in high school. He tries to explain it away as a group hallucination or someone pulling a prank on my friends and I, But I know deep down what happened was unfortunately real, and it still gives me great anxiety when I think of it. The experience took place in Lower Alabama when I was in high school almost 8 years ago, but I still remember every detail like it happened moments ago. 3 friends and myself were making a trip to another friend's house way out in the boondocks, maybe 30 minutes outside of any nearby city or town. There's only one road that takes you to his house, and it's just a long strip of concrete that's in dire need of repair. But considering only a handful of people live out there, why would the state waste their time and money? On both sides of the road, it's just dense forest that creeps to the edge of the road sometimes. Hardly nowhere to pull off, and absolutely no streetlights. We were in my friend's brand new red Mustang that he had gotten for his birthday, and he was proud to drive us all around, wherever we wanted to go. It was him, we'll call him Jamie, driving, my friend Dave in the passenger seat, and myself with my other friend Mary, crammed in the back seat among his giant sound system, no seatbelts, just half standing, half sitting, in the floorboards. It was very uncomfortable, and the rattling of the music shook my entire body. But I was just happy one of us had a vehicle to take us to our buddy's home. Finally, we get to the long strip of road that would take us there, and we're very disappointed because there was another car on the road, which meant Jamie could not show off how fast his new car was. Although there are no crazy turns or curves on the road, it's a solid yellow line the whole way because of the endless hills making it impossible to pass. We accepted that we were going to have to go to the speed limit. Jamie finally turned his music down so he could talk crap about the little red Toyota that we were staring at the back of for about a half an hour. It's about 9 p.m. There is no visible moon through the dense clouds, so it was pitch black, besides our headlights and the car in front of us with their own lights, which were their brights because I am sure they were aware of the ton of deer that live out there. No other vehicles came from the other direction, and no one was behind us. We drove for only about 10 miles, cutting up and hardly paying attention to the road since we knew where we were going. Suddenly, the car in front of us slams the brakes on, skidding their tires, stopping in the middle of the road. Jamie was not following too closely, so we didn't have to do the same, but we came to a slow stop maybe 15 feet behind them. There was a brief pause before we heard a woman's blood-curdling scream coming from the Toyota, and that's when we saw it. It stopped on a declining hill so we could see in front of the Toyota, and what we saw, I will never be able to forget. It was some kind of humanoid-looking creature standing on all fours, but the arch of its back was taller than the Toyota. The only thing that made it humanoid was its hairless skin, but it was very pale, almost gray, very wrinkly, and its limbs were impossibly long. The legs, fingers, arms, neck, everything looked like stretched taffy, and we could all see its bones through its skin, especially the backbone, that were almost spike-like because they were jutting out. It wasn't facing us, just stopped mid-stride in the middle of the road, facing the right side of the forest. It had backward-facing knees, like a bird's legs, no tail, but still had the posture of some kind of animal. I hope to God it was an animal, but there's no animal in Alabama that would be taller than a car on all fours, and like I said, it had human-like skin, hands, feet, and its head was like a human skull. No one in our car said a word. Jamie instinctively hit the lock button for the doors, though our windows were still down and the woman in the Toyota was still screaming bloody murder. For a moment, I remember telling myself that it was just some kind of prank, a weird art sculpture or something, because it was not moving. But then those thoughts quickly dissipated when the thing cocked its head in our direction. Its face was just as terrible as the rest of its body, pale and wrinkly. Just an indentation for a nose, tiny black holes for eyes, no ears, and impossibly large red-stained mouth that formed into a wicked smile, showing its multiple rows of pointed teeth. The woman's scream grew terribly louder at that moment, and the thing seemed to finally be almost startled by it, turning its head back toward the forest, taking only 2 giant, fluid, animal-like steps, and disappearing into the woods on our right without a sound. As soon as it was out of sight, Jamie slowly crept the Mustang forward around the still-stopped Toyota. We saw a man and a woman frantically arguing and crying in the front seat. When we got in front of them, the man put the Toyota in reverse and goes a bit off the road to turn around and floors it in the direction we had come from. Apparently, they were not headed. Where they were headed was not important enough. I almost thought we should do the same, but I couldn't get myself to make a sound, let alone a word for a sentence. Jamie went only about 5 miles over the speed limit as he rolled the windows up, and no one said a word for the rest of the 20-minute drive. We finally got to our friend's house. He was waiting outside for us, waving as we pulled in the little dirt driveway. All 4 of us scrambled out, pushing past him to get inside. I remember him saying something like, "Wow, looks like you guys saw a ghost or something." Dave turns to him with the most serious face and says, "Or something, yeah." We got inside, and part of me was still thinking it was some sort of hallucination, even though we hadn't drank or smoked all day. So, being the artist of the group, I asked our friend for some paper and pencils. Without question, he retrieved them, and while sitting in the living room, I suggested that we all should try to draw exactly what we saw before we try to discuss anything. Sure enough, each of us drew the same exact creature and showed it to our friend before explaining the full story. He was horrified and took the drawings out back to a small fire pit and lit them. None of us protested because we never wanted a visual of that thing again. He asked us things like, had we been drugged or were we pulling a fast one on him, but considering there were 2 other people that saw the same thing, and most of us were at the point of tears, he knew we weren't lying. He let us back inside, locked the doors and windows, put a movie on to distract us, but we kept bringing it up, trying to make sense out of it, and got hardly any sleep at all that night. He took us all home the next day, and we saw the Toyota's black skid marks in the road where it happened, confirming it wasn't all an elaborate shared dream. And before we dropped off Mary, she told us she didn't want to hang out with us anymore, simply because being around us would remind her of it. We sort of just nodded, and I honestly haven't spoken to her since. I rarely speak to the other 2 anymore, for other reasons, but a few times I've tried to bring it up to them, and they refuse to talk about it. I know they know it happened. It's just too painful for them to discuss, which is understandable. I hate talking about it to this day, and have only told 2 of my closest friends, and now my boyfriend, who's very opposed to supernatural things. So you can understand why I didn't get any relief talking to him about it. I never really believed in these sort of things before this incident, but it's definitely changed my perspective a bit. All I know is there is a very strange and terrifying creature that prowls lower Alabama woods. Today's second encounter. One summer night when I was younger, I was babysitting my siblings. I ended up with everybody sleeping on the bed or the floor. I stayed up with my brother, who was at the corner of the bed by the window playing a video game, as I was lying on the floor across from him by the other end of the window. I remember I was just looking at the blue lights I had hung around my room. Outside my window, I heard like super big footsteps, stomping on some plants. At the time, we had big sunflowers in the backyard. It sounded like something huge was squishing them with some big feet. In my mind, I imagined big boots like in the cartoons. My brother didn't hear anything, so I kind of brushed it off, assuming I was tired from staying up late babysitting. I just took a quick peep outside and saw nothing. Not more than 5 minutes passed, and I hear these giant steps running all over the top of my house, especially the corner of my room was under. Sounding like something crawling around the top of the roof nonstop, I got up, and as soon as I did, I heard this loud screech. I looked over at my brother and didn't have to ask him anything. He dropped his video game on the floor, and I ran to the window, locked it as fast as I could. My brother asked me what it was. I said, I don't know, but it's going to be okay. I heard the second screech, but it wasn't as crazy as the first time. After that, the crawling stopped. I turned on the light, and I stood by and waited for my brother to fall asleep, since he was so scared after what we had both heard. I looked out of the window to check, and everything looked as normal. I finally fell asleep as well. Then the next morning, I woke up with my mom and grandma standing outside. I went to see what was going on, and the sunflowers were all destroyed, like spread out every direction as if something big and heavy had fallen on top of them. I looked at my mom and told her what had happened. Till this day, I never found out what that was. I have my suspicions now, but at the time I had no clue. It still gives me chills thinking about it. Today's third encounter. Before I tell you what had happened that night, let me tell you who I am and when this happened. My name is Tyler. I am 16. I am a junior at a semi-private school. This event had happened 2 years ago, almost 3 now, so bear with me on the details. The memories from that night are still a little groggy, but anyway, here I go. It was late 2017, October. I had gotten home after a long day of school and decided to hop on my PS4 and play some Call of Duty Black Ops with some of my friends. As hours passed, old and new friends came and went. I was home alone for the week because my mom and dad went on a business trip to Georgia, as well as visiting family. It wasn't the first time that I had been home alone for a long period of time. I usually went to bed at around 9:30, but since it was a Friday and I was home alone, I decided to stay up past 9:30. Well, 10 o'clock came, then 11, then 12, so on and so forth. You get the point. My eyes felt heavy and were foggy because of how long I had been playing video games for. But the fact of me wearing contacts doesn't help either. I decided to check the time since I knew it was getting late. It was 1:20 in the morning. I was in a match, so I didn't want to get up and turn everything off. I decided that I was going to finish up the current match, and then I was going to bed. As I finished up the match, a putrid, bad, musty smell hit my nostrils. To be honest, it tensed me up for quite a bit. I gagged at how bad it was. I knew I wasn't going to be able to sleep through it, so I played a couple of more matches in hopes for the smell to go away. But that was not the case. Over time, minute by minute, it almost seemed that the scent was getting closer and stronger. I attempted to ignore it and continue to play my game. I have a noise-canceling headset, but I could swear that I heard footsteps from behind me. But I remember that I had 3D sound as well, so being me, I ignored it. Then I heard tapping. I took off my headset to confirm that it was the game. Then I heard it again. It was coming from the window behind me. It had shades over it, but with the outside light on, I saw a silhouette of something almost human-like. I stood in my room, frozen with fear, looking at the silhouette, wondering if I was just delirious from lack of sleep. Then its head tucked to the side like a bird. It tapped on the window again in the same pattern. As adrenaline shot through my body, I decided, being the curious young teen I was, to open the shades. When I got closer, the stench got stronger, and I could tell now that it was the smell of something decaying and dying. Could it be a dying animal that just so happened to stumble upon my window? I thought, but then I remembered the tapping and how in unison it was. I finally got the courage to pull back the curtains, and I wish I hadn't. It had a human face, but where the eyes were supposed to be, there were just sockets. It had sharp teeth so jagged I could swear it could tear through steel. Its face was decomposing and rotting. It looked like it had been dead for a very long time. I stood where I had opened the window curtains in fear. I couldn't take my eyes off of this thing. I didn't know if it was looking at me or not because of its empty, soulless eye sockets. Then it tilted its head with a sharp movement that startled me, and I screamed. It got up with so much speed and went back into the woods. When it got up, I saw its body and how contorted it was and how awkwardly it moved. I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. God, for weeks even. I haven't seen anything since that day. I'm only sharing this now because my class a couple of weeks ago, we learned about Native American cryptids and skinwalkers and such. The only thing is, I live in Maine. I just hope that's the only time I see this thing, because who knows what it might do if we cross paths again. Today's final encounter. One night a few years ago, myself and my two sisters were outside of our house underneath this tree. That's when we started to hear some strange noises that I'd ever heard in my life coming from the tree above us. It was almost the cross between a dog's growl and a baby demonic creature screaming. We immediately ran to the porch. I really wish I would have looked up, but you have to understand how terrifying this made us. After a minute or two of me looking out into the night and saying, "What the heck was that?" I decided I wanted to go back out there and look, but I didn't see or hear anything. It's been a few years and it's been difficult to remember exactly what it sounded like, but it was definitely like a demonic baby crying and some sort of dog-like growl. The reason I think this was a Dogman is because of the statements people have made, how they have a weird growl / voice, whatever you want to call it. My God, can you... I am just making an assumption because they didn't see it, and the way he described the vocals. I'm thinking it was a Dogman in the tree above them. But can you imagine if they had looked up, like just, they're sitting on the side of this tree, relaxing, probably just, talking like kids do, and look up and see this Dogman peering down at them. That is absolutely terrifying. I can't even fathom what they must have felt like. It's every time I read or hear someone else's encounter, it brings me right back to the day that I had mine and how terrifying that was. And I've had some really creepy paranormal encounters. Like, we've seen some weird UFOs in our area. I've seen some in Maine near Somme Sound, which those of you familiar with the east coast of Maine, the upper east coast of Maine, Somme Sound is the deepest sound on the east coast, and it is supposedly haunted by a witch. There's just a lot of my Dogman experience. So every time I hear someone's encounter, it kind of really resonates with me, what they went through. So for me, that was pretty terrifying. I don't know about you, but I enjoyed it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I'd also like to please encourage everyone to be kind to each other. Now, earlier today there was a comment, and this woman said, "Jeff, why do you ask us to be kind to each other when you were rude to this person?" Well, the reason why I was rude was because this guy was being rude to another subscriber. And I kind of responded back harshly. They had ended up deleting their comment, so it looked like I was responding to this poor subscriber, which she knew I wasn't because we had talked about it since. So that's what she had seen. I don't want people to be rude. I don't like rudeness. But when people are rude in the comment section, it really bothers me. I've got a lot of people that I care about on this channel, and when I see anyone just attacking people randomly on my comment section, I can't take it. It's not my comment section, it's yours. So I don't encourage people to be rude or mean to each other. We live in a world crazy enough. It's our government wants us to be the sheep. The Dogman wants us to be the sheep. The Sasquatch want us to be the sheep. So hopefully we get stronger and they get weaker, so we don't have to worry about them. like the human versus Neanderthal, right? Anyway, have a great night, guys, and may the Great Spirit watch over all of us and guide us on our path in life. And with that, my friends, I'll see you tomorrow.